Looking for a new graphics card without taking a risk with used mining GPUs? Tired of Nvidia and AMD pricing every single GPU at $500 and up? There's a growing number of Chinese manufacturers who are creating new graphics cards from decommissioned mining GPUs, similar to the X79 boards that I'm known for taking a look at. But just like I asked all the way back in 2017, do they even work, and should you consider one for your next build? Today's video is brought to you by craftcomputing.store, the letters I, P, and A, and viewers like you. Or, at least it could be. If you like the things we do here on Craft Computing, consider joining the Patreon. Every contribution helps keep power on to my lights, my server rack, and my beer fridge. Seriously, I would not be able to do the things that I do without the amazing support from my patrons. As little as $1 a month gets you exclusive access to my Discord server, which my amazing patrons from all over the world keep lively at all hours of the day. You can chat with me or the other hosts from our weekly live show, Talking Heads, or simply lurk and catch the ebb and flow of the craft computing community. Visit patreon.com/craftcomputing to sign up today. That's patreon.com/craftcomputing, and again, thanks for watching. Welcome back to Craft Computing, everyone. As always, I'm Jeff. Now, it's been no secret that you can get new or remanufactured graphics cards from AliExpress ever since the crypto crash around 6 months ago. And while the RX 580 is still a great option for under $80, what if you'd like some of the more modern bells and whistles from graphics cards, like GDDR6 memory or even ray tracing support? Enter the NVIDIA RTX 2060 Super from Seijishi. And at just $200, it might be a fantastic budget option in a segment of the market NVIDIA and AMD are completely ignoring right now. Before we get into today's review, I purchased this card for $204 off AliExpress with my own money. SJS obviously had no influence over this review and doesn't even know I exist, so let's go ahead and get into it. The most affordable graphics cards that have launched in the last 12 months that actually qualify as mid-tier would be the AMD RX 6650 XT at $399 and the NVIDIA RTX 4070 at $599. Below that, there are cards like the AMD RX 6400, a $180 card that gets handily destroyed by even the RX 470 or GTX 1650. The RX 6500 XT is another offering available for between $190 and $230, but it barely beats out the tried and true RX 580, which, by the way, is available brand new for around $80 right now. Click right there if you want to see my review of that card. The fact of the matter is, $200 just doesn't get you decent performance in today's market, at least if you're only shopping on Amazon and Newegg. This RTX 2060 Super from SJS was just $204 shipped straight to my door. For that price, you're getting a Turing-based NVIDIA GPU with 2,176 CUDA cores, 8GB of GDDR6 memory, and 34 RT cores, specs that fall just short of the RTX 2070, but for a fraction of the price, even considering the used market. I keep a very close eye on the prices of graphics cards on eBay and a lot of other used marketplaces, and the cheapest buy it now price as of filming for a working 2060, not sold as parts or non-working, was $191 after shipping, and that's for the non-super 6GB model. I also keep a close eye on GPU requirements in modern games, and 8GB should be seen as the minimum here in 2023 if you expect to be able to play the latest AAA titles. Taking a look at the SJS 2060 Super, it is a very attractive card, featuring a true dual-slot design, a white shroud, and dual fans for a cooling solution, similar to most other GPUs in this price tier. The heatsink is a solid chunk of aluminum with a pair of copper heat pipes running the full length of it. There's also a backplate adding to the premium look and feel of this card. What does take away a bit from that look and feel is where the backplate and the shroud meet at the rear of the card. They don't actually attach to one another, and so the backplate just kind of floats on top. A lot of these cards do use generic or reference design coolers and shrouds, and the backplate is a bit narrower than the shroud, so the screw posts don't line up and give it a firm contact point. This is not really a huge deal though, and it is purely a cosmetic gripe, and one you're not even likely to notice in your case unless you spend the money you saved on this GPU on a host of RGB lighting. Or, better yet, spend that extra money on a 1080p 144Hz monitor, because you're going to need one. Our test bench today is my Irying 11900H ES motherboard running at 72W TDP and an unlocked turbo. We've got 16GB of DDR4 2933 MTS memory, along with a 240GB Patriot P310 NVMe drive for the OS, and a 1TB Silicon Power A55 SATA SSD for game storage. Before I got to benchmarking, I ran a quick sanity check against my EVGA RTX 2060 KO, because if the SJS can't even beat this card, there's no real reason to move forward with testing. And for the most part, the 2060 Super came away with a very easy victory. In TimeSpy, based on DirectX 12, we see 17% higher performance than the RTX 2060 KO. Port Royal with full ray tracing was even more impressive, scoring a full 22% higher in all three tests. DirectX 9 testing in 3D Mark Firestrike did give a bit of an anomalous result, with the RTX 2060 Super scoring just 13% higher in graphics tests, but losing to the 2060 KO by a full 23% in the combined testing. This may have something to do with the 2060 KO being based on the TU104 NVIDIA GPU, rather than the TU106 of the RTX 2060 and RTX 2060 Super. Gamers Nexus did a great breakdown of raw compute performance during their initial review of the 2060 KO, where they saw similar performance gains using the KO in Blender and other compute-heavy applications. It's likely there's a compute aspect of this GPU that is in use during this specific test that's causing this disparity, as my performance differences were very much aligned with Gamers Nexus's. So, with my sanity well and truly checked, let's go ahead and get to gaming benchmarks, starting with Cyberpunk 2077. While I could easily turn everything up to max settings in this game, and then wax poetic about how much the RTX 2060 Super sucks, I instead wanted to take a more measured approach and fine-tune settings to get the most performance out of each title. It's not like a gamer on a $200 GPU is going to expect to run ultra settings in every single game anyway. I opted to go with ray tracing low preset at 1080p, along with enabling DLSS in performance mode. And right out of the gate, we see some very impressive results, with an average of 68 frames per second and a 1% low of just 47. Even 0.1% lows were kept in check, bottoming out at 34 FPS. The initial release of RTX cards was definitely met with some justified criticism around their overall performance, and the heavy marketing of RTX ray tracing. But 4 years on, both RTX and DLSS have come into their own, and even some of the most demanding titles run easily on what was one of the lowest spec RTX capable cards Nvidia ever put to market. Another title that received a much needed DLSS boost was Red Dead Redemption 2. Running at 1080p and mostly medium settings usually resulted in frame rates of around 45 FPS or lower on entry and mid-level GPUs. With DLSS enabled, we coasted to an easy 117 FPS on average with a 0.1% low of only 77. Red Dead is one of my standard benchmark titles, so there are plenty of comparable results I can point to from past testing. Probably the standout to me was the RX 6650 XT I reviewed around this time last year. That's a card that goes for around $280 today, but managed just 63 FPS on average with a low of 38. Of course, that's without DLSS, and is still a very playable result. But it goes to show both how far DLSS has come as an upscaling technology, and how great of a value this 2060 Super is turning out to be. Moving on to some racing action, Project Cars 3 managed to hit 134 FPS on average, with a 1% low of 106 and a 0.1% low of 76. This was at 1080p, with all settings set to high, and swapping MLSS with FXAA anti-aliasing to help boost performance. Gameplay was very smooth and predictable, with no apparent frame drops or latency, something that I noticed most when playing racing titles. Overall, this was a great experience on the 2060 Super. Keeping with racing and jumping over to Wreckfest yields probably the most impressive result for the day, with an average of 204 FPS and a 0.1% low of just 101. Whereas I normally test this game at 1080p and ultra settings, I opted to go for high settings this time around, as most mid-tier GPUs struggle with this game maxed out. Even still, I was only expecting around 120 FPS, not to be pushing above 200 in this title. So yet again, our little $200 GPU looks every bit like the budget killer I hoped it would. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands also had some impressive performance here, managing to hit triple figures with an average of 103 FPS. Don't be turned off by the 0.1% lows in this title, as most Borderlands games do have frame dips when moving from hipfire to scoped view, and that same anomaly shows up in pretty much all of my benchmarks as I often play with sniper builds. Still, over 100 FPS is not a bad day at the office, considering this was at 1080p and max settings. The Wonderlands is not often kind to GPUs during benchmarks, but yet again the 2060 Super exceeded my original expectations. I did run a pair of games at 1440p just to let the card stretch its legs a bit more. Starting with Hitman 3 and running at 2560 by 1440 with high settings across the board, the 2060 Super nearly crossed triple digits again with an average of 99 FPS. But even more impressive was the 0.1% low of just 57. This is a game that has a tendency to scale well with graphics card performance across the entire range. Even still, it's nice to see a $200 GPU bottoming out at around 60 FPS while leaving all of the eye candy turned on. Last but not least, I couldn't resist a little bit of esports action in the form of Rocket League. At 1440p and all settings cranked to high quality, the 2060 Super had little trouble with my favorite FIFA title, cranking out 296 frames per second on average with a low of just 92. Just about any discrete GPU will handle esports titles with relative ease, but seeing 300 FPS at the highest settings still makes me smile given the low price point of this card. While the gaming performance was impressive to say the least, dare I say I'm actually slightly more impressed with the overall package and how well the card stayed cool and quiet. During testing, fans were spinning between 1000 and 1700 RPM, but even on an open test bench, they were basically inaudible. What's more, the card hit a max temperature of just 68 degrees Celsius on the GPU core, all while maintaining a boost clock of around 1950 MHz. The budget GPU market hasn't received a new killer card since the GTX 1060 and the RX 580 were brand new, and priced around $230 each at launch. The RTX 2060 6GB was still $349 at launch, with the 2060 Super going for $400 and up. Since then, it seems like the only GPUs worth even talking about have been $500 and the sky's been the limit, leaving many gamers in the dark when it comes to new builds or upgrade options. At $200, the SJS RTX 2060 Super might just be the shot in the arm some people have been looking to give their gaming PCs. If you have an aging NVIDIA 700 or 900 series GPU, or maybe even a 4GB model of an RX 470 or 570, the 2060 Super would be a substantial step up in overall performance. Jamming up to 8GB of GDDR6 would also allow you to play even the most modern games, now that even 6GB cards are running a bit short when it comes to modern game textures and assets. If you're interested in picking up an RTX 2060 Super from SJS for yourself, I will have affiliate links down in the video description, along with links for motherboard and CPU options for building your own budget PC today. On your way down there, make sure to drop this video a like and subscribe to Craft Computing if you haven't done so already. Follow me on Mastodon at Craft Computing for daily shenanigans like this. And if you like the content you see on this channel and want to help support me in what I do, consider joining the Patreon. Link is also down in the usual place. That's going to do it for me in this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys. My bowel movements are going to look weird tomorrow. Beer for today is an interesting one. From DuClaw Brewing in Baltimore, Maryland, it is the PastryArchy Unicorn Farts After Dark Chocolate Cinnamon Crunch Breakfast Stout with gold glitter, 8.5%. Definitely glitter in it.
I think I can see some of the glitter. Oh yeah, it's coming in the camera a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah, it's difficult to see, but I'll crop it.
I can see little specks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they're super tiny.
It's catching the light enough for the camera.
Yeah.
It's really dark, but
So what's funny is the smell on this beer. Despite its super dark and cinnamon and pastry, coffee, chocolate, stout kind of flavor profile, the aroma is really muted and reminiscent of like 1% milk with just a little bit of cinnamon, which is hilarious because I'm pretty sure all they did was put Cinnamon Toast Crunch into a stout and then called it a pastry stout. I'm here for it. I'm not complaining about that in the least, but I'm just kind of surprised there's not much aroma on this one. And if I'm being honest, for a pastry stout, it's a little bit thin for my liking. It's not quite as bold and rich as I would like in something that claims to be pastry stout. Again, it's kind of got the consistency of thin milk, of either a 1% or a skim milk even. And the flavor, while there's definitely some cinnamon and there's definitely some chocolate in there, it's airing more towards like chai tea than fudge sundae. And again, for this definition of stout, I expect more chutzpah with it. It's a fine beer, and it's very pretty. But I think this one just falls slightly below where my expectations were set for it. Still good, though.